Okay. Any question, Abbas, from your side which you want a little more clarification? Abbas?
Yes, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Actually, yes. I'm just setting up my microphone.
Not a problem. Murat, any question from your side which you would like to ask when we are waiting for 2-3 more minutes for others to join?
From the previous lessons,
Mm-hmm.
I just got the idea that the most important knowledge area
Mm-hmm.
with regards to the exam is requirements analysis and design definition.
Yes.
Yeah, and the content is very dense, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday we solved some questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I might be wrong, but what I understood is that Veibach does not pay so much attention to the solution evaluation when compared to the other knowledge areas. Am I right?
Not necessary. I think I'll share my screen and I'll probably take you through, I'll take everybody through a small presentation on the exam focus and all. Give me a second. Not this one, courseware. Faculty presentation, CBAC courseware. I used to have certifications intro. So if you see here, okay. If you look at the amount of questions that you will get, of course you get maximum questions from RAD, and we will spend some good time on RAD today again. Then rest of the knowledge areas are almost same, 15%, 15%, 14%, 14%, 12%. So there isn't a great difference in the other knowledge areas. The only knowledge area that stands out is RAD.
Okay, I see.
So don't think that solution evaluation is not important. It is as important as any other knowledge area.
Well, for me it's important, but actually I might be wrong, but techniques or other things with regards to solution evaluation is not so comprehensive.
Okay. True.
Well, yeah.
That is something true. So I think what you may be referring is, if you go to our study guide, by the time we come to solution evaluation, we would have discussed many techniques prior hand, because that being the last knowledge area, you typically would have covered many things. So that's why probably you are feeling that there aren't many techniques for solution evaluation. Okay. So if you see here, in planning, we covered around 7-8 techniques. In elicitation, again, we covered quite a lot of techniques. In requirements LCM, we covered good number of techniques. Strategy analysis also, we covered good number of techniques. RAD, of course, has many techniques, which we will study today. And of course, solution evaluation has little less number of techniques. But it's just a distribution we did. It does not mean that solution evaluation can use less techniques, something like that. If you see the mind map as well, the mind map will give you a little bit good idea. Like if you look at the techniques mind map, the two knowledge areas which dominate in terms of techniques are actually elicitation and RAD.
Yeah.
And planning also has a lot of techniques. Strategy analysis also has a lot of techniques. This area is little less, but it's just a classification we did for our teaching purpose and some kind of a conceptual understanding. If you study the Babok guide, it probably would have same number of techniques used any other knowledge area. Okay, so don't have that mindset that solution evaluation is not important. In fact, a lot of times I have seen people failing in solution evaluation knowledge area because people don't give that much importance, and then they don't pass that knowledge area. And as I was telling you, you need to pass in each knowledge area.
Yes, exactly.
So don't ignore any part of Babok.
Well, for me it's important actually because it's related to the very much related to execution.
Yes.
Phase.
Hmm.
I mean, so we can do everything right regarding to planning for the other knowledge areas, but here when we evaluate a solution, that's very much related to also the project planning.
Yes, true.
The execution of the projects
Hmm.
are not dealt with enough care.
Hmm.
So it's important. We can do everything right, but we can propose a very ridiculous solution.
True.
It might be accepted, and at that phase, I think the project sponsor or the other upper level, management lose their interest after some time.
True.
Actually, it's a very critical point.
True.
When we start to evaluate the solutions. But
True.
the attention to the project is generally lost at later phases.
Sure. Okay, so
Can I join this discussion?
sure, Abbas, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, the interesting thing here, the solution evaluation, by the time it may be the right solution, but it is changed, it becomes like obsolete or need more changes. But the agreed solution, the project manager, the implementation manager, they have to implement as it is agreed and documented. The issue here we will verify and we validate if the solution is still valid, because by the time things could change, right? If that's what I'm thinking about.
No, that is one of the reasons why many projects are moving away from a large waterfall model. If you remember in the past, like when I started my career, we used to have 2-year, 3-year long projects. But such projects have come down significantly. If you go and talk to any client today, how many of you are working on a project where things will be delivered after 3 years? For 3 years, there will be no delivery. Are you working any such project?
No.
Who is that, Andrea?
Yeah. No, we have one that's a 2-year project, but there's deliverable benchmarks along the way of different pieces.
True. But earlier there used to be projects where there are no intermittent delivery. You get the product at the final UAT stage. And those are becoming riskier for companies because technology is changing so fast that it's very hard for companies to really keep track. Like I actually see that happening in my own career. When I was in a large company called Infosys Technologies, and there were, of course, our clients, and we interacted with so many companies. Companies used to invest $20 million, $30 million in building their own data center. That kind of money companies used to spend. Today, if you look at the value of that data center, it's probably $2 million or less. Because the computing power has really changed. I mean, you get so much computing power for such little price today. In fact, having a data center of your own, you're probably kind of keeping a white elephant in your organization. It only consumes money, gives hardly any benefit. Because maintaining a data center requires huge amount of power, manpower requirements, maintenance, all kinds of things, whereas you probably would get a similar computing power on cloud at 1/10 price. So what happened to that investment which the company made, $20 million, $30 million? It's just down the drain. There are so many systems I have seen in companies which have become so obsolete. Like I was actually interacting with a client, and they said we have something called, which became very popular about 10 years back. It was called telepresence. And I was invited to attend one such telepresence meeting. And then I was figuring out my WebEx probably works better than telepresence. It's clearer. I can have many more people in the meeting. I can actually have up to 100 people joining from 100 different locations in my meeting. And I pay $50 to WebEx per month. Whereas that telepresence system can accommodate 4 participants. You need a dedicated room. For what? What is it that you're getting? By investing into a technology where 4 places have to have 4 dedicated rooms, and then the equipment is so expensive and only 4 people can talk. And here I have a technology which is 100 location, $50 a month. So the equations are changing very fast. So if that's why companies are also getting worried about investing too much into IT, because what you invest today, maybe in 3 years' time it becomes obsolete. Okay, I think we are all there now. Who is there without a name? Let me just find out. There's one person without a name. Who is there?
Hi, Alan. I seem to be the blank today. It's JC.
Ah, okay, JC. Now I remember.
It refuses to acknowledge me, so I'll be blank for this session.
That's okay, don't worry. I know, because you are the only person without a name. So from that I can make out. Okay, so good morning. Welcome you all back to the program. So what I'm going to do today, there is something that I wish to cover in terms of advanced techniques for CBAP, and of course spend some time in going through case-based questions, because that is something helpful from CBAP perspective. But before I get into that, I wanted to show you a small presentation which I had prepared some time back, which gives you a little bit idea about the inputs that I received from various CBAP participants. So I think most of... Yes, Jesse.
Sorry, Alan, I forgot my name. I'm only seeing a green screen at this point. Is that correct?
No, I think it's because of your connection not being proper. Why don't you do one thing? Just restart your machine and rejoin.
Okay, I'm going to have to reset because up until now it's only stayed on a green. So can you do that? I'll back out and start again.
That should be okay. Sometimes it happens. Just restart and rejoin. It'll be all right.
No problem.
Okay. So, I think most of it you guys would know, but I thought just for 10-15 minutes I'll cover it through for you. These are all known stuff. I'll skip it. Okay. I think this I have already explained to you in last session, and we covered that part as well. Okay. These are all, I think, again, we have been talking about it. How much time, how many questions, how many scenario-based questions, and how many case-based questions. Usually I hear there are between 40 to 50 case-based questions and between 70 to 80 scenario-based questions. So we saw quite a few scenario-based questions yesterday as well, and today we will be seeing case-based questions. And this is what I was trying to give you an idea, saying in which knowledge area, how much percentage of questions you get. So if you see here, RAD somehow gets a whopping majority. It's 30%. So in fact, for CCBA, if you look at it, it's 32%. It's almost like 1/3 of the entire question pattern. And somehow RAD gets a bit more prominence in any exam. If I take any requirements engineering course, RAD seems to be the topic that gets maximum weightage. But after RAD, if you see, they're almost identical. There isn't a great difference. Like strategy analysis gets 15, LCM 15, solution evaluation 14, planning 14, and elicitation 12. So in a sense, elicitation gets a little less priority, but it isn't significantly different. Unlike in ECBA, solution evaluation gets 1%. So sometimes I really wonder why IIB even kept that topic. If you are going to give 1% question, rather not have it. Okay. So I think most of the steps you guys are fairly okay. You already have started taking a training. I trust most of you are IIBA members or will become IIBA members very soon. And you would have an access to Babok V3 copy as well. Only suggestion is till we complete the training, it may not make sense for you to spend too much time on Babok. But since now we have completed theory, it's a good time for you to take a look at Babok, and I trust you will be able to follow Babok. The study guide that we gave you is essentially a concise Babok. So we try to remove as much duplication as possible. We try to put the data in a tabular form so that the amount of content that you have to go through reduces drastically. Maybe in another 3-4 months, we will reduce the content even further. And how we are able to reduce the content so much? It's mainly because trying to find some generic properties and then making sure that people read things at a higher level before they go into the lower level. So that's one of the reasons why, if you see in the techniques mind map, we are trying to combine the techniques into certain kind of groups. Okay, that means anytime a technique belongs to collaboration group, it will have some common property. Anytime it falls into group-based technique, again it will have some common property. So can somebody tell me what would be a common property of a group-based elicitation technique? Something comes to your mind?
Working with many people.
Correct. What Abbas says, in a group-based technique, you are interacting with multiple stakeholders at the same time. And when you interact with multiple stakeholders at the same time, there is always a possibility of conflict. See, you yourself will conflict much less. I mean, you may contradict your own viewpoints sometimes, but the possibilities are less. But when there are 4 people in a meeting, obviously all 4 are not going to agree everything. That's very unlikely. Okay, so there will be disagreement between stakeholders, and as a BA, we must find out a way, how do we resolve these conflicts? How do we manage a group collaboration activity? That is why if you see Babok, it always recommends having a facilitator for group-based techniques. Precisely the reason is very simple. The group needs some kind of a facilitator so that the group can stay focused, the conflicts can be resolved in an amicable way. Those requirements don't exist for individual based techniques. But individual based techniques have other limitation in terms of you are discussing with stakeholder X, now you go and talk to stakeholder Y, and both of them don't agree. Now you have to find a way how to resolve the opinions expressed by different stakeholders. In a group setup, it's a lot easier because you are in the same room, or at least you are in the same meeting. So if there is a conflict, you can quickly discuss saying, okay, I don't think it is right, or somebody says that is not right, and then you tell why it is right, why it is not right, and then you resolve it. In individual based techniques, it's harder. Okay, so that's why we kind of started making these kind of groups and making sure that we make some sense out of this grouping mechanism. Okay. And I think maybe by next week or so, we would take a decision on having either a Facebook group or a Google group, whichever group we find offering better features and easier administrative work, because I trust we already have a Google Mail ID for you, because YouTube is one of the channels we use for our video posting. So we are going to work on a Google group. It looks like that seems to be more logical to me. But again, I'll leave it to my operations team to decide, and they'll probably do a quick study and come up with something. So we are going to make a private study group for all of you, so you can actually share your questions. If there is any question in the forum, I would definitely answer. If we find anything interesting from new participants or new persons who have taken the exam, we will definitely put in the group forum. And yesterday we also talked about getting your application process started, and I trust some of you already have. Go ahead. Is that JC? I think. JC, I think you still have the same problem.
I do indeed.
I'm a bit
I switched
surprised.
everything off and back on.
It's a bit strange. How can I help you? Are you on Skype by chance?
I've got a Skype link here. I haven't used it in ages.
Okay. Do one thing. I'm keeping my Skype account also active. Try joining me on Skype. The ID is Ellen Mishra, LNMISHRA. And I'll see if I can share the screen and with you on Skype. Okay, that would be another alternative for me to work with you. Okay.
Okay, no problem. Let me see if I can figure this out.
Sure.
I'll just carry on, so I'll join in whenever I can get this computer. Maybe it's just my link that's weak.
Okay, possible. I doubt, because the audio is working fine, but sometimes technology is not under our control. Okay.
Okay, no problem. I'll try and fix it on my end.
Okay.
Thanks.
Andrea, were you saying something?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we had gone up to this, and I trust all of you know the benefits of becoming an IIBA member, and I really feel that it always makes sense to be an IIBA member because it allows you a lot of benefits. One straight benefit is you get $125 discount on your exam fees, and then of course you have access to good number of books on Babok in IIBA library as well. So I think these are all fine. I kind of covered the application part yesterday. All this I showed you yesterday as well. And as I said, it doesn't take much time for IIBA to approve your application as long as all your data is provided to IIBA. Okay. Now then this is not what I wanted to cover. There is something called exam tips. This is what I wanted to kind of cover. And I think maybe this is something I would probably do it in the last class. It can be helpful for everybody. Okay. So I'll skip it for the time being. I will do it in the last session because that's our last exam prep session. So today what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through the study guide, and possibly I will cover a couple of techniques little bit in more depth. The reason being, as a senior BA, you should be more comfortable with these techniques compared to what we would expect an ECBA or CCBA to know. So in BA planning, I'm going to cover one technique called estimation, little bit more in detail. And I trust we did cover a bit, but there are many kinds of estimations that we talk in Babok, and that could be helpful for us to understand. So top down and bottom up, I think we already discussed. But there are many other techniques also Babcock mentions. One is something called parametric estimation. So what's an parametric estimation? And parametric estimation is something like having a base method to calculate. Suppose you go to a builder or a construction company and you want to build a house for yourself. Usually, how do construction companies charge you? What is the method that they use?
Square meter.
Correct. So they would either use a square meter, square feet as the basis for calculating their cost. And that's a parametric estimation. So you say, okay, per square feet it seems to be so much. And if I'm trying to construct a 2000 square feet house, this is how it will cost. Okay. Then there is something called rough order of magnitude, which is a very high level guesstimate, you can call it as. So a lot of people call it as expert judgment, guesstimate. Then there is a concept called rolling wave, which what it means is as we complete a phase, we understand our productivity better. And based on the experience that we gather in completing our work, we revise our estimates. That is what is called rolling wave. Does it make sense for all of you? Is rolling wave clear? Okay, very good. Okay. Then we have something called Delphi estimation. So in Delphi estimation, what happens is you give the estimation to be done by multiple experts, and then you try to reconcile what these experts are telling. So if the experts tend to tell the same kind of number, then you know you're probably right. But if they tell very different numbers, then there's somebody who is making an assumption or a mistake.
Is this, am I understanding correct? This is probably most similar to how Agile estimation is done when they do like planning poker?
Yes. Planning poker is very similar to Delphi estimation. Okay. Then we have another method which is called PERT. And in PERT technique, what we do, we take 3 values for every estimate. One we call it as most likely, one we call it as optimistic, one we call it as pessimistic, and then we use a formula to come up with the PERT estimate. So it's 1 into optimistic, 1 into pessimistic, plus 4 into most likely, and divide by 6. This is the formula that is used for PERT estimation. Okay, so these are different kind of methods one can use. The method in Agile world is slightly different, because in Agile world what I have seen is typically companies or projects put one BA for 5 to 10 developers. So in some companies, if you have a 5-member team, they would have a full-time BA. In some companies, they may have even 10 developers for one BA. Andrea, can you please go mute?
Sorry.
Okay. So this is something that I wanted to talk about in function estimation technique. I think functional decomposition is fairly simple. You guys will understand it very well. Glossary is also quite simple. Interface analysis is also not very difficult to understand. But I think the one item tracking is again fairly simple. It's just kind of recording things in any kind of a system or a tool, or it can be even an Excel. Org model is also very simple, but I think maybe it's good to know the different kinds of org models. One, we call it as functional organization, where you put people based on their skill. One, we call it as market-oriented organization, where we put people along the markets. So that could be geography, that could be a industry. And matrix means you have two managers that you work with. Like I remember when I was in IBM, we used to have a concept of project manager and people manager. Why do you need a people manager? You need a project manager. That's very simple. I think all of us understand. What is the need for a people manager?
Like resource planning?
Not so much of resource planning. For that you don't need a manager. I think an executive will do. Okay. It's mainly because, see what happens when a consultant or an analyst is working. You work with one project manager for 6 months, you move to next project. Then you work for another 6 months, you move to next project. So every 6 months, you are changing your manager. So who is taking care of your professional growth? The project manager is not keen, because the project manager knows that you are there only for 6 months. After that, you are going to go somewhere else. So that's why people manager is responsible for your long-term career planning, growth. If you have any issues in performance, they are responsible for managing that aspect. They don't manage your work. Yes? No. These are not HR people. These are from delivery organization. Okay. But they're technical people. So they can actually help you in some of your work, guide you, mentor you. But their aim is not to manage your day-to-day activities. And I used to like that model because, and I worked in a projectized organization before IBM. And I used to have that challenge because every 6 months we are changing location, we are changing projects. And in fact, there was a project in which we would never know where we are. So the project had such complex situation, and the client would tell us, our company, I was in PwC, the PwC manager will tell, for this week you be in this location. It's a large project. It was a very large program. So we would change even our locations every 7 days. And we used to have 8 locations in the project. And depending on the work and some issues, we may be moving between these locations whenever needed. And that becomes hard, like I think. For some time you can do it, but not for very long. Okay. Then I think another technique I think all of us as senior BAs should be very comfortable is called stakeholder list, map, and personas. I think stakeholder list, many of you would know, it's kind of a list in which you put all the stakeholder details. And if you see in your library, you have a template which you can use for stakeholder list. You can make a better list as well. It's just that something I created and I kept it. So if I go to individual V3 templates, so if you look at stakeholder list, I called it a stakeholder matrix, but you can call it in any name, just a list. So I kind of gave an example also of one of our project. So stakeholder name, type, role, contact details, criticality, what is the key expectation of the stakeholder, how much contribution we expect from the stakeholder in the project, what is the current contribution, if you need some improvement, what can you do? Those kind of details I captured in stakeholder matrix. This is what Baba calls it as stakeholder list. Okay, then there are 2 other diagrams which we typically use. One we call it as stakeholder matrix. The diagram doesn't seem to be great. Maybe I would have these diagrams. I have improved these diagrams, but we have not been able to include it in the book. I have to include that. I think that's a priority work for me, because we worked hard to make these diagrams more readable. Give me a second. CCBA, mastering CCBA. not here. Okay, give me a second, I'll find out. These are the diagrams. Okay. I think this diagram is far clearer. So one of the things that we talk in stakeholder management is stakeholder matrix. And what we do is to kind of put these stakeholders into 4 categories. One, how much influence the stakeholder has and how much interest the stakeholder has. So if somebody has very high interest and influence, then you put them into the high critical category. In fact, in my personal opinion, you can actually do a little better job than this, and I think this is something that I will ask IIBA to do. You could actually even divide this last block into 2 parts. Okay, how would you divide this into 2 parts? Why should I divide these key players into 2 categories?
Maybe customer and non-customer?
Not so much. It's mainly to indicate if the stakeholder is positive about the project or negative about the project. It makes a whole lot of difference in the way you manage your stakeholders. I don't know. Have you guys come across any situation where there are stakeholders who are not very happy about the project?
Yeah.
There can be situations when they are not very happy with the project. So one of the experience I can share with you. So there was a project which was being done by a very large consulting firm. This was the $8 million 2-year project. So end of year 1, the client found that they have spent 50% money, 50% time, and progressed only 20%. So they got very nervous about the whole project, because if they continue in the way the project was being run, it's probably going to take another 3-4 years to complete the project and a lot more money. So they asked the organization where I was working to take over the project, and they said, we still have this much money left, this much time left, can you complete the project? Our company picked it up, saying that, okay, we can do it. But many client managers did not simply feel the fact that this can be done. And they did not treat our company as competent enough to do such a complex project. So they were very unhappy about that decision, and they made our life very difficult. So we had to do a lot of extra effort. So I remember our project manager requested our sales head to come in. Our sales head met the client CFO. We had a huge discussion almost for a day to convince the managers that we are on right track, we will get things done, don't worry. All that we did, and finally we were actually successful. So we literally completed 75% work in 50% time. So this is what something I would say, I think it can be a good improvement to stakeholder matrix. Maybe I'll write it to IIBA if they would like to include this suggestion in the technique. Okay, then another one is called an onion diagram, which is a very interesting diagram, where you are essentially putting the members or the stakeholders depending on their interaction level with you. So there are stakeholders who would interact very closely, almost on a daily basis. So if you see a Scrum team, the Scrum team meets every day. Okay. Then there could be interactions at a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, or half-yearly basis, depending on how often you have to interact. And that's how we keep drawing these onion diagrams. So these onion diagrams will drive a lot about your communication frequency. So the core your communication is more frequent. The outer, the communication is less frequent. Okay, so this is something that you guys should keep in mind. Then one of the other things, I think RACI matrix, I trust all of you would know, which is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And then there is also a concept called a persona, which I trust I would have a diagram here as well. Here is it. So a persona means you are trying to describe a fictitious customer. So there is nobody called Jill. There could be a person called Jill Anderson. I don't know. I trust there will be somebody. But it's just a persona that we created to understand how the customer feels, likes, dislikes. And whenever we are looking at our product, we could actually figure out if Jill is going to like this or not like this. Okay. So this is what is a persona. Then I think these are the few things, and then I think all this I trust Peter would have covered in detail. I think one of the tables that we would have left out purposefully, because I think the junior BAs don't need it, is how to choose the right approach for business analysis. So Babak talks about two kinds of approaches. One is called predictive and one is called adaptive. In fact, some people ask me, how did we name the company as adaptive? That's a long story. But somehow we like this word and we kept it. And in today, Babak V3, adaptive is a very key word. So if you see here, in olden days, many companies used predictive approach, and which was very, very heavy planning, mostly drawn from military world. That's how predictive approach came. And usually this is very helpful when you have a very complex project, like a satellite launch, where you can't take chances. Whereas in business world, we are not launching satellites. We are developing mostly commercial applications, and a small failure is not going to create a huge impact. So a lot of companies have moved into an adaptive, iterative approach, which is what people call it as agile, scrum, and all kinds of names people give, where you start delivering things in short cycles. So you kind of take a weekly goal or a half-monthly goal and you try to complete the work. So that is the purpose of adaptive. And of course, in adaptive, we are not going to document as much as we document in waterfall, because the time available is much less. And if you see, most of the things in adaptive are less formal. It's more interaction oriented. So those kind of things are given here. And I would trust many of you would have already seen the website, which is called the Mother of Agile Movement. Whenever you get a time, you probably take a look at this something called Agile Manifesto. That can be very helpful for getting a brief of what Agile really stands for. Okay, so this is one good place, and it's just 2 pages. So you have Manifesto for Software Development, and there are 12 principles of Agile software. That's it. There is nothing much in the site, only 2. And then there are, of course, a lot of signatories. That means people who agree to the manifesto. So if you see here, there are plenty of signatories. Those are there. I think I can find my name as well. I signed it up long back. I don't know how to find, but I once saw my name here because I signed it up some time back. And you can actually translate it into many languages. This is my mother tongue. I trust nobody would read it. But this is how my mother tongue looks like. So Svetlana, you can probably find a Agile Manifesto in your language, whichever language you you use at home, you can actually take it. But I will find very hard even to read my own language now. It's like so much formal language. Okay, so that's it. So anybody would like to ask me any question on BA planning before I go into case-based questions discussion on BA planning? These are some additional things I thought I will talk to you today. Not in all areas I have everything extra. Some areas I would have something, so I'll talk about it. Anyone? Murad? Okay. If no questions, let's take one or two case-based questions and see how are we able to track or tackle those questions. So let me go to the question bank and pick up case-based questions. Okay. I think I'll leave the okay, because these cases are a little long, so you first read, and then once you complete that reading, you let me know. I will go down. I think maybe this font is a little small. I'll leave it at this level. Okay. So once you read the paragraph, you just let me know. I will scroll down. Can I go down?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can I go down?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so from the answering point of view, let me go a little sequential. So we'll start with Abbas. Next question will be for Andrea, then JC, then Murat, then Rahul, and then Samatara, and finally Svetlana. So Abbas, what is the first question answer?
Since I could not finish all the reading, I will pick up just C.
No. That is not right. You said if you need time, let me know.
Yeah, let's finish. So now, instead of passing the question just like that, I just pick up C.
No.
One of the techniques, right?
No, I know, but what is that the person is trying to do?
Actually, I could not finish reading all this now.
Okay, so shall I go back a little bit? Okay, the first two paragraphs, This is okay for you?
It's okay.
Okay.
Actually, go.
Okay, then I will show you the next two paragraphs.
Can I see the answer?
Okay.
I think they need to figure out the business policies here.
Okay. Andrea, what would be your choice?
I thought C as well, because I thought he was, evaluating how well they were doing in their business analysis practice and trying to come up with best practices.
Okay. JC?
Out the business rules.
Okay. Murad?
Business rules.
Okay. Where did you study about business rules in the case? Anywhere it is talking...
Actually, not business rules, but business policies. I am...
Oh, okay. Okay. But did you hear anything about business policies? What are business policies? Business policies are intent statements that as a business we will not pay bribe. That's a business policy. Rahul?
Stakeholder engagement approach.
Okay. Samatara? Hello, Samatara. Okay. Svetlana? I didn't hear you, Svetlana. I still don't hear you. Maybe there's some problem in the audio. Maybe you can put it in the chat window.
Yes, I did. Okay, I see the problem now. Okay, so it's the performance assessment, I think.
Okay. Okay. So I think all these terms, when you are reading Babok, be very clear what these terms mean. Policies are intent statements. Stakeholder engagement approach is to understand how to interact with stakeholders, how to get their inputs. Business analysis performance assessment means, are you doing business analysis work well? Not how the systems are behaving. Systems performance assessment can be different. Business rules are basically statements that the system deploys. Say, for example, you can always tell that a discount shall be provided only 15 days prior to the program. That's a rule that we have. Okay. If you read the case, what is it is trying to explain? It is trying to explain how the business analyst is engaging with different stakeholders. Okay, so he or she is talking to...
I'm sorry. In the end, it's talking about its engagement with the other business analysts, though. Are they a stakeholder?
Yes. Why not?
Even if they're not on the project? I guess I took it to mean that they weren't on the project.
Not necessary. From the business analysis activity perspective, they are a stakeholder, even if they don't work in the project. In fact, they can be very important stakeholder because they can give you an idea about what documentation exists, which stakeholders work in what way. They have worked before. So you are new to the project. They have worked before. So In fact, when I go to a client place, I try to find out if there was a project which was executed earlier on the similar system, who was the business analyst? Because the business analyst would know a lot of things which I would take months to learn. Why not take advantage of the business analyst's learnings? The person can tell you this is where you will find the best material, these are the tools we use. Okay, so the best answer is actually what Rahul said, which is stakeholder engagement approach. Try to make sense from the case. That is what it would involve. Okay. So maybe the next question, if you see here, okay, the first 4 paragraphs are same, so you don't have to read it again. So only the last paragraph you read, and this time the question starts with Andrea.
Business analyst activities, B.
Okay. JC?
I agree with B.
Okay. Murad?
D.
Okay. Rahul?
I'll go with D.
Okay. Samatara? What happened to Samatara? She is not responding. Okay. Svetlana?
I think it's A, timing.
Okay. See, usually your activities and timings are output. Okay. What the question is trying to ask is what drives your business analysis approach. Usually complexity and risk are more important. Because if the project is very complex and very risky, you would like to structure your business analysis approach in a particular way. Okay, if the project is very simple, maybe you will structure it in some other way, because in a simple project, doing it in waterfall way is very okay, because you know the requirements very well, and you can plan it out very nicely. Whereas if it's a very complex project and you are not able to get a clarity on what you need to do, so maybe you do a discovery phase. So first I will do a discovery phase, figure out what I need to do, then I will possibly plan my timing and activities. Okay, so I would go with D. Some of you said D, some of you said A, B, but I would go with D. Okay, then the third question, and this time it will start with JC. Okay, again read the last paragraph because the first 3 paragraphs are same. Is it JC this time? I think so.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah, take time, take time.
It's either A or D.
Okay. Murad? Maybe I'll ask Abbas. Abbas?
Yes, plan business analysis approach.
Okay. Rahul?
D.
Business analysis approach. Okay. Svetlana?
I'll go with D, the last one.
Okay. Okay. Now, if you read the last paragraph, what is the stakeholder is doing? If you see here, BA template for kickoff and review meetings for each phase involving from each stakeholder group. He meets with managers of each group at the beginning of major engagements with their staff to arrange for discovery, data collection, deployment, and training. He schedules after action reviews at the close of each effort and arranges to circulate the BA findings for review and correction by each group. Finally, the BA assesses relative importance, interest, and level of interest of each stakeholder. So what are you doing? You are essentially planning your stakeholder engagement. Okay. Business analysis approach would essentially give you an answer. Am I going to follow waterfall or agile? That's the main outcome of business analysis approach. Whereas here, what the BA is trying to do is to figure out a way, or he or she is engaging with each group, telling how we would work together. So all that the person is doing is to make sure that the stakeholder engagement is in the right direction. Okay. I know the questions look little odd. It takes a little time to appreciate the case. And that's why we have to learn to read these cases and make sense out of them. Okay?
So I had a question. So the planning approach wouldn't help you with the engagement?
It may help you. These are all kind of cross-linked stuff. But suppose you are thinking of going ahead in waterfall way. If you're going in the waterfall way, you typically would like to engage with all the stakeholders before you do your elicitation. Because in waterfall, everything has to be decided upfront. Whereas if you are taking an iterative approach, you may decide to interact with the stakeholders based on the features being implemented. Suppose some features are important to one particular group. It may not be important to the other group. So then you don't have to really spend time with the group whose features are not being picked up. You only have to worry about the group for whom the features are being taken up. Okay. So I know
I have an argument for this specific question.
Go on.
The whole paragraph is about planning approach. The last question is about the stakeholder engagement. So this is where the trick is. Like I look at the whole paragraph as whatever he's doing, this is a part of the approach, which part of it is the plan stakeholder engagement. So this is confusing here.
Cases will
confusing in a way. What would be the right answer? Because we're only going to get the chance to answer that once. So.
True. I fully appreciate Svetlana, but sometimes questions are a bit tricky for CBAP especially. It's not as straight as for CCBA and ECBA. CCBA and ECBA usually get much more straight questions. Okay. And that's why I'm spending more time with you guys. I'm not spending that much time with ECBA or CCBA. But don't worry. I think as you start doing these questions, you'll get better at it. There's no doubt about it. And as I also told you prior hand, when I started my preparations, I was only 50% right. I made 50% wrong. But as we work through, we will be better. And in spite of my best efforts, sometimes I may go wrong. Okay. Now look at the last paragraph, and this time we will go with Murad. Okay.
Can we move on?
Yes. Okay. Then can I go down? So I think maybe you can manage with this much. I think this is okay. I think from a readability perspective, maybe we can manage with this.
May I ask
Are
a
the-
question? Again,
Sorry.
just a question.
Yes.
For the bottom part, are the answers in order? Should we be paying attention to the order, or
No.
just-
The order is not important.
Could you push up for the question? Yeah.
A and D.
Okay. Why don't you think D is right? Is it not part of waterfall?
D?
No, I just said, you said A and B. So I'm asking, why should not you include D as well? That's what I'm asking.
I said A and B. B for book.
Okay.
You are asking D.
No, I'm just saying, not option D. I'm saying, why are you not considering the D as an consideration for waterfall? The option D. This one.
Isn't that covered in B?
Okay, but D is not incorrect. See, among these four statements, which statement does not belong to waterfall?
C.
C does not belong to waterfall. C belongs to agile or adaptive method. So that's why A, B and D will be correct.
But can I ask though, so D, I don't understand, if you have a change control process, why do you need a plan for approvals? Because that's part of your change control process.
Could be, yes. But D is not incorrect, just that the language approvals are part of change control process. Okay. Okay. So I think maybe because we are doing the case-based questions first time, we would always be having lot of doubts in our mind. One of the things that we usually try to do is there is a method called elimination. So, for example, we looked at C and we know very clearly that C belongs to Agile, not to Waterfall. Then I look at the options where C is present. So now I know option A and option D are incorrect because C is present here. So now I am left with two options between A, B and D and A and B only. Okay. Then between the two I read and make up my mind whether I should go with A and B or I should go with A, B and D. If the statements corroborate or confirm to the case, then I take it as right. When I should be able to match the question and the option. If I am able to do that, then that option can be considered for answering. And from that perspective, I would go with A, B and D. Okay. Good. I think you people must be feeling a little stressed out.
I feel this question is just like English language exam. Because if they ask only for the three options, it will be very, we can know it.
Abbas, I know, but Abbas, it involves some English. No, I'm telling you very frankly, a lot of international tests do play around with English, which I don't like, but I am not the sole authority deciding anything. In fact, in some of the tests, you get more time if your mother tongue is not English. I know tests where if your mother tongue is non-English, you are given more time just to understand English. So it is important for all of us to understand the fact that there will be some language influence in the test. Svetlana, just to kind of confirm your query or concern.
Yeah, I think English is going to be a main issue. You need to read things, understand it, and it would be a time consuming. And because there is no time, it will be a rush. And rush will affect the right answer.
Okay, very good. So I completely agree with you. That is why what I suggest is do all your scenario-based questions first. Okay, don't get into a case before you complete your scenario-based questions. So try to complete all your scenario-based questions in first 2 hours. Okay, then you leave about 90 minutes for case-based questions. So even if you are leaving out 1 or 2 cases, still okay. But if you get involved into case-based questions in the beginning, you will run into trouble. That's something that we have to remember. Okay, so now we'll take a short break, and when I come back, I'm going to take you through 2 major knowledge areas like we did planning. The next major knowledge area that I will do would be strategy analysis, because that involves some amount of number crunching, and then I will do RAD. I'm not going to do elicitation or solution evaluation or LCM, because those are something that you can do it yourself, so I'm not going to spend that much time. But these 3 knowledge areas are harder to appreciate, so that's why today I will focus on these 3 knowledge areas. I think somebody gave me a message, so let me see what was the message. Murad, okay. I was sure that B was there, then C was not there, but the rest is okay. Don't worry, Murad, it's fine. It'll always be, sometimes we will not read it right. With some 1 or 2 questions we'll make mistakes because of our hurriness. But staying calm during the exam is very important. I have heard from a lot of participants saying that first 10 questions are usually much harder. I don't know why it is. Maybe it's intentional to kind of to put you in a little bit of a stressful situation. So if you're not getting a question, just skip and go and come back later. Okay, good. So I think let's take a 15-minute break. We will come back and then we will look at the strategy analysis knowledge area.